Okay, folks, buckle up. Today on the Mysteria Archive, we delve into the fascinating story of the Black Knight satellite. Get ready for a wild ride. There's something orbiting Earth, and it shouldn't be there. It wasn't launched by NASA, SpaceX, or the Russians. In fact, it was reportedly detected decades before the first human-made satellite even left the ground. It's been picked up on radar spotted by astronauts and photographed from space. Some say it's alien tech, others just space junk. NASA calls it a thermal blanket because that's not suspicious at all. But believers claim it's something much older, an ancient probe silently watching over us for over 13,000 years. And the weirdest part? No one knows where it came from, or who or what put it there. This is the mystery of the Black Knight satellite. 13,000 years, really. But that's older than the wheel, older than the pyramids. But here's the thing. Every great mystery starts with a wait what moment. And this one, it's got more red flags than a Cold War spy convention. All right, let's head back in time to where this thing supposedly began. Before satellites, before NASA, before, well, pretty much everything. A shadow in the sky. The story of the Black Knight satellite doesn't begin with rockets or astronauts. It begins with radio. In 1899, a young Nikola Tesla was experimenting with early wireless power transmission at his Colorado Springs lab. Then something strange happened. Tesla claimed to have picked up a signal, a patterned repeating transmission that didn't seem to come from Earth. Now, Tesla being Tesla, his first thought wasn't, weird interference. No, he believed he was receiving messages from extraterrestrials. Fast forward to the 1920s, ham radio operators start reporting something just as strange. Long delayed echoes. They'd send out a signal and get the same signal back. Not milliseconds later, like a normal echo, but seconds later, as if something out in space was catching the transmission and bouncing it back. Enter physicist Jørgen Hals in Norway. He documented these long delayed echoes too, and like Tesla, couldn't find a natural explanation. Nothing had been launched into orbit. There were no satellites, no spacecraft. So, what was out there reflecting these signals? Some theorists believe this was the first clue that an object, artificial, alien, and already orbiting Earth, was quietly listening, possibly responding, or maybe just watching. This is where the Black Knight legend starts, not with a sighting, but with a whisper. Okay, so Tesla's chilling in Colorado, zapping lightning bolts around like he's auditioning for a Marvel movie, and then suddenly, alien radio. Now, before you break out the tin foil, it's worth noting that Tesla was brilliant, like I just invented Wi-Fi before coffee brilliant, but he was also a bit eccentric. I mean, this is the same guy who tried to build a death ray and talk to pigeons. But what's crazy is he wasn't alone. Those weird echo signals, other people picked them up too, including actual scientists with beards and degrees and everything. Let's move forward a few decades, because in the 1950s, someone did spot something up there, and things got weirder. A satellite before satellites. In May of 1954, the San Francisco Examiner ran a story quoting a US Air Force official. The bombshell? That the military had detected 2 unknown satellites orbiting Earth. The problem? The year was 1954. The first human-made satellite, Sputnik, wouldn't be launched until 3 years later. So, how exactly were there already satellites up there? The man behind the claim was Donald Keyhoe, a former Marine pilot turned UFO researcher. Now, he was known for being outspoken, dramatic, and very, very convinced that the US government was hiding something. According to him, these satellites weren't American, they weren't Soviet, and yet they were there, orbiting Earth. Skeptics dismissed it, a mistake, a radar glitch, Keyhoe being Keyhoe. But radar systems at the time weren't exactly hobby store setups. If military-grade detection equipment said something was up there, it was worth asking, what exactly did they see? This is one of the earliest official mentions of what would eventually become known as the Black Knight satellite, though at the time it didn't have a name. It was just an eerie, unexplained presence. An object that shouldn't have existed and yet somehow did. And remember, we're still years away from Sputnik, so if this thing really was in orbit in 1954, it didn't get there by rocket. It was already there. All right, let's talk about the 1950s, back when hair was greased, Elvis was king, and apparently Earth already had mystery satellites floating around it. Now, Donald Kehoe basically kicked in the door yelling, "They're up there, man." And honestly, even if he was half right, that's pretty wild. Now, some folks think he was just trying to sell his books, and hey, I respect the hustle. But the Air Force wasn't exactly in the habit of confirming alien tech in orbit just for fun. And here's the fun twist. This wasn't just one rogue blip. They said there were 2 satellites. Double the mystery, double the paranoia. All right, let's dig into how the Black Knight finally got its name. The Black Knight emerges. By the late 1950s, radar stations and observatories around the world began detecting an unknown object in orbit. It wasn't behaving like typical space debris. It wasn't part of any known mission, and then came the biggest head-scratcher of all. The object was in polar orbit. That means it was circling Earth from north to south, a path used for surveillance satellites. But back then, no country had the tech to launch something into polar orbit. In 1960, Time magazine reported on the object, calling it a dark satellite. Some began speculating it was a Soviet spy tool, others weren't so sure. And as the legend grew, the name took hold, the Black Knight satellite. But here's where things get complicated. See, the modern Black Knight mythos isn't the result of one single event. It's more like a jigsaw puzzle made from unrelated pieces. Tesla's radio signals, the long-delayed echoes, Kehoe's early satellite claims, the polar orbit anomaly, even a strange image taken in 1998. We'll get to that in a moment. They've all been stitched together in a single ominous narrative, a 13,000-year-old alien artifact silently orbiting Earth. Is it real? A coincidence? A modern myth born from Cold War paranoia and sci-fi dreams? Whatever it is, the Black Knight has become more than just space junk. It's become a symbol of the unknown. And we're just getting started. So, we've got mystery radio signals, rogue satellites, and now this thing's doing polar orbits like it's got clearance from NORAD. And let me put it this way, if I started doing laps around your house in a ski mask and nobody could figure out how I got there, you'd probably have some questions, right? That's kind of what the Black Knight is doing, just casually cruising over the poles in the 50s like it owns the place, and no one can explain how. And the way this story builds, it's like a conspiracy theory burrito. A little Tesla here, some Cold War sauce, toss in a spooky NASA photo, and boom, space mystery supreme. And next up, the photos, the actual images that launched 1,000 internet threads. And maybe, just maybe, show us what's really out there. STS-88, NASA's accidental leak. Fast forward to December 1998. The Space Shuttle Endeavour on mission STS-88 is delivering the first American module to the International Space Station. Everything seems routine until the astronauts start snapping pictures outside the shuttle. And one of those images? Yeah, it sends the internet into full tinfoil mode. Floating just above the curve of the Earth is an object. It's dark, angular, almost sculptural. It looks nothing like a piece of space junk. The photos are released, and almost instantly, people start whispering, "That's the Black Knight." The object's shape is bizarre, nothing like a standard satellite or tool. It casts long, sharp shadows and seems intentional, intelligent even. And NASA steps in fast. Relax, it's a thermal blanket that came loose during the mission. Sounds reasonable until you compare it. Actual photos of the lost thermal blankets show crumpled, fluttering objects, soft forms. But this, it's got structure, it's got symmetry. And the kicker, the object didn't just float away. It stayed in orbit for several days, reportedly even tracked by radar. That's not something a flimsy blanket should be doing. To believers, the STS-88 photos are the smoking gun. To skeptics, they're just a misunderstanding. But either way, the photos give the Black Knight its most famous face, and from this moment on, the legend wasn't just told, it has shape, a body, a presence. It became real. All right, let's talk about this so-called thermal blanket, because if that's a blanket, then I'm a kitchen sponge from Alpha Centauri. I mean, we've seen NASA lose a load of stuff in space, tools, gloves, even a toothbrush. But this thing looks like Darth Vader's escape pod. It's too geometric, too angular. Come on, blankets don't look like that. And honestly, even if it's not alien tech, it's still deeply weird, which is kind of worse, right? Like if it's not aliens, then someone dropped a miniature stealth ship in orbit and just didn't tell anyone. And let's rewind again and ask, was Tesla the first to hear it speak? The Epsilon Bootis message. Remember those mysterious echoes bouncing back from space in the 1920s? Decades later, a Scottish astronomer named Duncan Lunan decided to take a second look. In the 1970s, Lunan studied the patterns of those long decaying echoes and tried something radical. He plotted them as coordinates. And what he found? It wasn't random. According to Lunan, the signals formed a star map, a map pointing directly to the Epsilon Bootis star system, around 13,000 light-years away. But that's not all. He claimed to decode a message, an interstellar calling card from an alien probe sent by a civilization orbiting Epsilon Bootis. The message allegedly introduced themselves and explained they were observing Earth. Yeah, not a ping, a literal alien message saying, "Hi, we're watching." Now, here's the twist. Lunan later walked back on the whole thing, admitting it was more of an experiment in interpretation than a hard scientific finding. But by that point, the damage was done. The idea that the Black Knight could be an ancient alien satellite transmitting across time had already taken hold in the UFO community, and it stuck. It also fed into the larger theory that the Black Knight is not just some random piece of tech, it's a monitor, possibly placed here millennia ago to keep tabs on our civilization, like a cosmic security camera with serious patience. And if it's true, then we didn't just find an object in orbit, we found a message. One that's been floating above our heads since the dawn of human history, or at least that's what they say. Okay, let me get this straight. A space satellite sent us a 13,000-year-old star map, and we just said, "Cool story, bro," and moved on. Well, that's like getting a text from aliens and just ghosting them. Now look, Duncan Lunan's star map idea is more alien fan fiction than peer-reviewed science. Even he admitted that. But still, what if he was accidentally right? Now, the real question is, were those echoes just random space noise, or was something out there trying to say hello? Either way, this adds a whole new flavour to the Black Knight theory. It's not just watching, it might have spoken first. And speaking of speaking, what happens when someone down here finally sees it? Gordon Cooper's silent encounter. Mercury Atlas 9 astronaut Gordon Cooper is orbiting Earth aboard the Faith 7 capsule. It's the final flight of NASA's Mercury program, and Cooper's doing 22 laps around the planet. All routine, until it isn't. Near the end of his mission, Cooper reportedly sees something out of the window. A green glowing object moving in space outside his capsule, and it's not space junk. Even stranger, ground-based radar at Mokia Tracking Station in Australia reportedly picks it up too. Whatever Cooper saw, it was real enough to ping Earth-based instruments. But here's where things get murky. Official NASA transcripts make no mention of this sighting, and years later, Cooper himself denies the event in interviews. So, what gives? Well, some believe he was pressured into keeping quiet, that the sighting was scrubbed from records to avoid public panic, or worse, to hide what he really saw, the Black Knight satellite, up close and personal. And here's the thing. Cooper wasn't just an astronaut. He was a firm believer in extraterrestrial life. He even testified before the United Nations in 1985, urging them to take UFO sightings seriously. So, why deny this one? To believers, it's obvious. NASA silenced him. To skeptics, it's just a story that grew in the telling. But if it did happen, Cooper may have been the only human being to come face to face with the Black Knight and return to tell the tale. Sort of. I've got to say, if I saw a glowing green object outside my spacecraft, I'd be yelling louder than a toddler at a theme park. But Cooper is cool as ice. I guess that's astronauts for you, probably sipping Tang and casually watching UFOs fly past. Now, did he actually see the Black Knight? It's hard to say. It's kind of like someone saying they saw Bigfoot, then later saying, actually, it was just a hairy dude in a hoodie. But here's the weird bit. Cooper believed in UFOs. He wasn't shy about it, so why deny this one? Maybe he was pressured. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Or maybe this was the moment NASA realized they weren't the only ones orbiting Earth. Coming up next, the theories, the wild ones, the scientific ones, and the ones that will make you question everything. Theories: alien probe or spy satellite. So, what is the Black Knight? Well, let's start with the ancient alien theory. This one's got range. Some believe the Black Knight is a 13,000-year-old probe sent by an advanced civilization to monitor Earth, a sort of cosmic nanny cam. Except instead of catching us sneaking cookies, it's watching us invent fire, write Shakespeare and develop TikTok. This idea ties into the work of Erich von Däniken and the ancient astronaut hypothesis that aliens have visited Earth in the distant past and might still be keeping tabs on us. Then there's the Cold War theory. Maybe it wasn't alien at all, just top secret. A stealth Soviet or American satellite launched in secret, possibly to test new orbital paths like polar routes, or to track missile launches. Remember, in the 50s and 60s, space was the ultimate chessboard. But there's a problem. Radar records and visual sightings of the Black Knight go back to the early 20th century, long before rocket technology was even a thing, and neither the US nor the Soviet Union have ever claimed it. Then there's NASA's explanation, the skeptics' favourite. They chalk it up to a mix of misidentified objects, a lost blanket here, some signal bounce there, maybe a camera glitch or two. In short, nothing to see here, folks. But critics argue that these explanations don't line up. The object's orbital pattern, its longevity, and the consistency of reports from Tesla to Cooper don't exactly scream space junk. So, which is it? Spy satellite, alien probe, misunderstanding, or something else entirely, something we haven't even begun to understand? Okay, so we've got three main theories here: aliens, Cold War spies, and the old "oops, I dropped my blanket in space" routine. Honestly, if this thing is a thermal blanket, it deserves its own movie deal, because I've never seen linen with that much range. But here's what makes this so hard to dismiss. Nobody claims it, not the US, not the Soviets. And it shows up in different eras, like a cosmic time traveler who just won't quit. The truth is, we don't know what this thing is, but that's what makes it so fascinating. Which brings us to one last question. Why is it still there? The Black Knight remains. Let's recap. An object, possibly artificial, has been orbiting Earth for decades, maybe even centuries. It was picked up by Tesla's equipment in 1899, echoed radio signals back to early ham operators in the 1920s, appeared on military radar in the 50s, and got photographed in the 90s, and was possibly even seen by a NASA astronaut in the 60s. It's been called space junk, an alien probe, a Soviet relic, a misunderstood echo, and even a thermal blanket with a flair for the dramatic. But whatever it is, it's still up there, and we still don't know who or what put it there. Is it an ancient device left behind by a civilization far more advanced than ours? A silent observer recording our evolution, a failsafe waiting to activate? Or is it nothing more than a patchwork myth, coincidence stitched together by curiosity, imagination, and a dash of paranoia? That's the magic of the Black Knight satellite. It walks that fine line between fact and folklore, science and science fiction. It dares us to look up and ask, what else are we missing? Because here's the thing, space is vast, and if the Black Knight really has been there this whole time, then we didn't find it, it found us. So, what do you think? Is the Black Knight just misunderstood debris, or is it something far older, far stranger, and still watching us from above? Because in space, nothing is ever just what it seems. All right, so here we are at the edge of the rabbit hole, squinting up at the stars and wondering if something up there is squinting back. The Black Knight is one of those stories that's just weird enough to make you say, nah, and just persistent enough to make you go, wait, what if? And honestly, I love that, because whether it's an alien probe, Cold War relic, or a glorified space tart with an identity crisis, it makes us curious. It forces us to ask questions, and it reminds us that we don't have everything figured out, not by a long stretch. And let's be real, if there is an ancient satellite watching us, I hope it's got some popcorn, because we've been one heck of a reality show recently. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Now, please let me know if you prefer this slightly different format, a little bit less AI art and more of me talking to camera. Also, drop your comments below for future video ideas, just like this one, which I got from you. Please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Is free, and it really helps out our small channel. Okay, friends, until next time, stay curious.